When you think of the NYPD, you probably picture a symbol of order, of authority. But what happens when that very system, the one designed to protect, is accused of failing its own people? We're going to dig into how a huge, high-profile scandal has ripped the lid off a deep-seated pattern of sexual harassment, retaliation, and just straight-up institutional failure inside one of the most famous police forces in the world. And it all kicks off with one absolutely jaw-dropping quote from a federal court. Let that sink in for a second. That's not a line from some gritty crime drama. That is an actual federal judge's description of an NYPD precinct. It's a shocking statement, and it really gets to the heart of a toxic culture that has ended careers and cost taxpayers millions upon millions of dollars. So how on earth did it get this bad? Well, all these issues that have been simmering under the surface for years finally just exploded with a scandal that went all the way to the top, the absolute highest levels of the NYPD's uniformed ranks. Okay, so let's walk through this. It really kicks off in late 2024. The NYPD's highest-ranking uniformed officer, Chief Jeffrey Maddrey, is forced to resign over these stunning allegations of sexual coercion. Then, by March of 2025, it gets even worse. Nude videos of the lieutenant involved are reportedly flying around department chat rooms. And then, in that exact same month, the NYPD quietly rearranges its entire Equal Employment Opportunity Unit. Coincidence? Now, the NYPD's official line was, oh, we're just following federal guidance. But you just have to look at the timing. It's impossible to ignore. This massive internal shakeup, putting the EO unit right under the police commissioner's thumb, happens at the precise moment the department is staring down a total crisis of credibility. But here's the thing. This crisis didn't just pop up out of nowhere. The department had been told, explicitly, years before, that its system for dealing with harassment was fundamentally broken. We have to go back to 2020. The city's Equal Employment Practices Commission did a deep dive into the NYPD's rulebook. And yeah, on paper, everything looked okay. But in reality, the system was an absolute failure. The audit found some really specific, systemic problems. Officers who filed complaints were just left in the dark about what happened. Investigations would drag on for months, way past the deadline, with no explanation. Get this, the department was even giving out outdated or just plain wrong contact info for outside agencies, basically creating dead ends for people trying to get help. And maybe most damning of all, there was no real formal system to punish supervisors who misbehaved. It created a culture where they could get away with anything. And yet, despite all of those terrible findings, look at this. The NYPD was handed this official Determination of Compliance certificate in September 2021. So how does that happen? Well, it seems like the department just checked some boxes, made some superficial tweaks to satisfy the audit on paper, but didn't address the root problems. The failing system got a passing grade, and the officers who needed it were left high and dry. You see, these weren't just failures in some dusty report. These broken systems had devastating, real-world consequences for the men and women wearing the uniform. There's a term for this, and it's called institutional betrayal. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's when the organization you trust, the one that's supposed to have your back, completely fails to protect you, especially from abuse happening from within its own ranks. The cases we're about to see are just heartbreaking examples of this. You can't make this stuff up. The guy in charge of the NYPD's Equal Employment Opportunity Division, Deputy Inspector James Kobel, was exposed for secretly posting hundreds of disgusting, racist, and sexist messages in online police forums. And what happened to him? He just retired before they could fire him. He avoided any real accountability. And that's the kind of culture this allows to fester. Captain Sharon Bally, the department's first female Guyanese captain, alleged that when she came forward to report harassment, a supervisor actually told her she needed more sex to stay calm. Just unbelievable. And the cost for that comment? A settlement of $800,000, paid for by the taxpayers of New York City. Or how about the case of Officer Cardenas? She said her supervisor called her his work P-word and made other just absolutely vile comments. By the way, it was this case that made the judge use that phrase we started with, sordid frat house. And the price tag for that toxic workplace? Another settlement, this time $535,000. So what happens when you try to do the right thing, when you try to stand up for someone else? Well, ask Lieutenant Angelique Olaechea. She testified for another officer in a harassment case. And almost immediately after, she was slammed with a bunch of retaliatory charges, and a department judge actually recommended she be fired. She was forced to resign. But a jury saw this for exactly what it was: pure, illegal retaliation. They awarded her nearly $900,000. This isn't just about misconduct anymore. It's a documented, expensive pattern of punishing anyone who dares to break the silence.
Okay, so if the internal system is clearly broken, what can officers actually do? Well, fortunately, the law provides some pretty powerful ways to fight back against this kind of abuse.
You can see the legal landscape right here. At the federal level with Title VII, you've got a really short 300-day window to file, and there are caps on the damages you can get. But look what happens when you get to the New York State, and especially the New York City laws. The time limit jumps to 3 years. The bar for proving harassment is lower. And this is huge. There are no caps on damages. That means juries can award amounts that actually reflect the harm and send a real message to the department. And for public employees like cops, there's another really powerful tool. It's a constitutional claim. Essentially, you argue that the sexual harassment you faced was a violation of your 14th Amendment rights. And this is a big deal because you don't have to go through the EEOC first, and it lets you sue the individual officers directly, not just the city.
So for anyone who might find themselves in this situation, the source material lays out some really clear, crucial steps. First, document every single thing. Next, save everything: texts, emails, performance reviews, all of it. Third, you do want to file a formal internal complaint to get it on the record. But number 4 is the most critical. Talk to an employment lawyer right away. Do not wait for the internal process to play out, because those legal deadlines we just looked at, they are always ticking.
Which brings us right back to the big question. Is the NYPD's recent restructuring a real step toward fixing things? Or is it just shuffling the deck chairs on the Titanic? Here's the difference in a nutshell. The NYPD's fix was to move the EEO unit from one boss to another, but it's all still inside the NYPD's chain of command. What advocates and lawyers are arguing for is real structural change, taking accountability outside the NYPD, with independent investigations, real civilian oversight, and making it an actual crime to retaliate against whistleblowers. So at the end of the day, the question is this: is just moving an office on an organizational chart enough to fix a culture that a federal judge called a sordid frat house? Is that really enough to end this pattern of institutional betrayal? Or is it just a new face on an old problem, keeping accountability safely behind the blue wall of silence? That's the question we're left with.